All right, get ready because we're diving into some thought-provoking stuff today. We're talking Charlotte Mason and her ideas about authority in education.
Yeah, and it might surprise you. We're going to hear about how she sees words like must and obedience
As being good.
Yeah, as forces that can actually be liberating for a child's development.
That's right. We're going deep on this one, folks, unpacking it all from Mason's book, Parents and Children.
Specifically, Chapter 4.
Authority and Docility.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, so to kick things off, Mason uses this really interesting analogy between a child and the Earth orbiting the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And she even uses these terms like centripetal and centrifugal forces. I mean, it's like, what does physics have to do with raising kids?
Well, think of it like this. A child, just like our planet, has this natural energy, this drive to explore, to push boundaries.
Right.
And that's like the centrifugal force in action, that outward push.
Okay.
We see it in a child's curiosity, their desire to, test limits and assert their independence.
So that's like the whole I want to do it myself phase
Right.
that every parent is familiar with.
Exactly. But just as the Earth needs the sun's gravity to keep it, from just spinning off into space,
Right.
children, according to Mason, also need this centripetal force of authority. It's this counterbalance that provides structure, security, and allows them to thrive within boundaries.
So it's not about stifling a child's curiosity, but kind of like channeling it in a way that encourages growth.
Precisely. Mason argues that when these two forces are balanced, it creates, the best possible environment for learning.
Yeah.
Because it's within boundaries that true freedom to explore can happen.
And this is where I find it really interesting because Mason, she doesn't shy away from using seemingly paradoxical ideas, right? Like she uses this phrase, proud subjection, which, to be honest, sounds a little strange to our modern ears. I mean, how can subjection ever be a source of pride, especially when we value things like, independence and free thought so highly?
That's what I love about Mason's work. She challenges us to really think differently. What if true freedom comes not from an absence of boundaries, but from the knowledge and the self-mastery that comes from understanding and embracing those boundaries?
So it's not about blind obedience, but more like this understanding that authority, ideally, is there to guide us, not to restrict us.
Yes.
And that those in authority, they, hopefully have our best interests in mind, and that their guidance ultimately is meant to help us grow.
Right. And we see this idea in so many areas of life, even outside of, just childhood.
Yeah.
Think about the satisfaction a skilled artisan feels when they perfectly execute a client's vision.
Or an athlete who thrives under a coach who's really demanding.
Yeah.
It's not about feeling controlled. It's about finding fulfillment in meeting a high standard.
And taking pride in that accomplishment, knowing that it came from discipline and trust.
Exactly.
You're able to achieve because you were willing to be led and challenged, right? And Mason even gives this example of servants. They find dignity in fulfilling their orders well.
Okay.
And she highlights how the word order itself is actually associated with things like honor and accomplishment. Think about military honors, prestigious awards,
right?
All rooted in this system of order and hierarchy.
We're so used to shying away from those concepts, though, especially when we talk about education.
I know.
Because they just seem completely at odds with our modern focus on individual expression,
Yeah.
like self-discovery.
Yeah.
But maybe, just maybe, there's a way to reconcile those two things.
I think so. And that's what we're going to explore more as we keep going with Mason's work. Be ready to challenge some assumptions about authority and discover how it might actually be the key to unlocking a child's potential.
I like it. So we're seeing this idea that authority for Mason isn't about control or holding someone back.
Right.
But it's more like it gives a kid that structure that they need to really, grow and thrive.
Yeah.
But here's where I think she throws us another curveball. Because she questions this very modern idea that we always have to give kids tons of choices.
Right.
And on the surface, that seems kind of counterintuitive, right? Like more choices, more freedom.
It seems that way. Yeah.
But Mason wants us to think about what happens when we swap out must with may too much. Does giving a child a million choices actually make them feel more free? Or could it create a different kind of pressure?
That's a great question, yeah. Because Mason really challenges us on this, you know? She's
Yeah.
saying that too much choice can be, well, almost paralyzing for a kid.
Right.
Instead of feeling empowered, they feel overwhelmed.
Right, because they're always second guessing.
Yeah. And then they might feel like they're always having to bargain or negotiate for everything.
It's like she's saying that too much choice can actually take away that feeling of security and stability.
Yeah, exactly. And she really gets to the heart of it. You know, she says, how does she put it? Oh, yeah. The parent or teacher who is pestered for leave to do this or that, contrary to the discipline of the house or school, has only himself to thank.
Yeah, they've basically undermined their own authority by making it seem like the rules are always, up for debate.
Exactly. It's like without that clear sense of boundaries, that gravitational pull of authority, things can just feel chaotic and unpredictable.
And kids, even if they don't always show it, they crave that structure, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. It gives them a sense of security,
Okay.
and then they can actually focus their energy on exploring and discovering things within those boundaries.
It's like how can you break the rules if you don't even know what they are?
Exactly. You have to understand the rules before you can, bend them or break them.
And that leads us to another super important idea in Mason's philosophy, and that's the power of attention. And I love how she described it. She calls it a very Niagara force.
Wow. Yeah.
It's already there in
Yeah.
every single child.
It's powerful.
It's not something we have to create or manufacture. It's just there waiting to be unleashed.
I love that image. It's so vivid. And it makes you think about how we, approach education, especially now, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like we're bombarded with distraction.
Right.
We're constantly fighting for attention. And I think sometimes we forget that children are naturally curious.
They are. They really want to learn,
Right. They're born explorers. And Mason believed that instead of trying to grab their attention with, all these gimmicks and flashy things, we should just focus on giving them those really rich, challenging materials.
Yes. Things that will spark their natural curiosity.
That will feed that
Yeah.
desire to learn.
Exactly.
So it's more about trusting that children, they are capable of engaging with those big ideas. That we don't have to water everything down or, make it super sparkly to hold their interest.
Right. Because kids, they can handle so much more than we often give them credit for.
And she was all about using like high quality literature, real world experiences,
Yeah.
even complex vocabulary, she thought.
Yeah, without dumbing it down,
Right. And she believed in meeting children where they were at, but also pushing them beyond their comfort zones.
Right. Because that's where the real growth happens. And that makes me think of that story Mason shares about that 11-year-old girl who's exploring London.
Oh, yeah.
And for her, it wasn't just sightseeing, right? It was this amazing journey of discovery because she had been studying like architecture and history beforehand.
So it wasn't just a bunch of buildings to her. It was like this whole other world opening up.
Yes. It's like those landmarks were like clues in this big puzzle she was trying to solve, right? And that's the beauty of self-directed learning. She wasn't trying to memorize facts, She was following her own curiosity.
And those are the lessons that really stay with us, aren't they?
Absolutely. When we make those connections for ourselves, that's when the learning really sticks. And that brings us to, I think, maybe Mason's most important point.
Okay.
And maybe her most, thought-provoking, even a little bit, maybe sad point.
Yeah.
She talks about what happens when adults, they lose that natural curiosity, and she says they go through life with their minds, and I love this, she says, maimed.
It's such a powerful word, isn't it?
It is. And it just makes you realize how important it is to approach education in a way that nurtures that love of learning.
It's like we have this idea that, learning is something you do in school.
Right.
And then once you graduate, you're done.
You've got it all figured out.
Right. But like Mason's work, it reminds us that our brains don't actually work that way.
No, not at all. We are designed to keep learning, to keep growing our whole lives.
It makes you wonder, what if we looked at like every experience, every interaction as a chance to learn something new?
Right. What if we could bottle that feeling of like wonder, that curiosity we had as kids?
Yeah. Like we always talk about wanting our kids to have a better world, but maybe we should be focusing on raising better kids for the world,
Kids who are ready to take on the challenges.
Yes. Kids who want to learn, who want to solve problems.
And that's why Mason's work still feels so relevant today.
Totally.
Even though she was writing like over 100 years ago, she makes us rethink like not just what we're teaching,
Right.
but how we're teaching it. And maybe even more important, how we, as, the grown-ups, how we keep learning and growing ourselves.
Because that excitement, that love of learning,
Yes.
that's what drives us to make progress, to come up with new ideas in every single field.
Absolutely. And when we can help kids tap into that, when we can give them the tools they need to learn and the freedom to follow their own path, that's when they really shine.
It's not just about, like, pouring information into their brains.
No, not at all.
It's about helping them become, like, active learners, people who contribute to the world around them.
Exactly.
So I think as we wrap up our deep dive into Charlotte Mason's ideas, the biggest takeaway for me is this. What if we stop trying so hard to, like, capture kids' attention?
Okay.
And we focus more on what we're giving them to pay attention to.
I like that. What are we feeding their minds?
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
What if we trusted that kids, they are naturally curious, they want to learn, and we just gave them the tools and the freedom to explore their passions?
Because imagine the possibilities if we could all rediscover that joy of learning,
Absolutely. It's a challenge, for sure.
It is.
But it's also super exciting because it opens up a world of possibilities for us and for the next generation.
I love it.
So think about it. The next time something sparks your curiosity, that thirst for knowledge, ask yourself, how can I help the kids in my life experience this too? How can I help them unleash that Niagara force inside them? Because, the world needs more curious minds, and it's up to us to help them grow.
I'm ready.